Hi Anuba, how are you?
Hello, sir. I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Very good. So we'll talk about morphing, but before that, let me tell you to the audience, since we have been assisting MSMEs for years now. Now we are just planning to put certain information, certain thoughts over digital medium also. So that's why this small video, why morphing or what are the advantages of morphing. We'll talk about it. So my first question to you, Dhruv sir, since you are the founder of PERCON and you have been associated with MSMEs in different solutions. So, uh, first question is why morphing instead of training?
Yeah, good you asked me that question, Anuba. It's a very relevant question. Um, See, let me inform you first of all that training is an event, and while morphing is a process.
Okay,
Yeah. So training also can be converted to a process, but that process will not have any continuity
okay,
because the follow-ups will happen only in segments. If you're doing a training for one particular section, then the follow-up can be done for that section. It will not happen holistically. So the difference is that when we are not doing training and we're doing morphing, we are actually approaching, the whole approach is holistic. The third point here is that entrepreneurs in training, they may not feel involved in the activity because the entrepreneur only takes a decision that the training has to be done, or else the entrepreneur himself has to go in for a training, but which rarely happens, particularly in the MSME sector. So entrepreneur may or may not feel involved in the process, in the event of a training. And morphing, on the contrary, is a top-down approach. It starts with a lot of leadership coaching with the entrepreneur himself, understanding what are his needs, his personal needs, his organizational needs, and then it's a top-down approach starting with him, and then there's a lot of hand-holding which is involved at every step. So hand-holding is something which, if the employer is looking for answers, the entrepreneur is looking for answers, or the senior management is looking for answers, we immediately get to have the answers through interactions with us. So that is how morphing helps.
okay. So that's the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Now,
fundamentally the difference.
yeah, fundamentally different. So training is more pocket wise. It morphing is involves a whole of organization.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
the approach is different. The obviously when approach is different, results are different.
Yeah.
Great. Now I have a second question also. What are the disadvantages of training?
See, in the MSME sector, Anuba, again a very good question. In the MSME sector, training will definitely can create a lot of hype. People are excited about training, and they after a good training happens, a good training session happens, the participants get into a hype that, oh my God, this was a wonderful place, a wonderful event. So they go with a lot of expectations back to their place of work. But what happens is when they go back to their place of work, the learning that they've had finds a lot of resistance, plenty of resistance in the workplace for implementation. Because what happens is everybody has not gone through that training. So you are not working in isolation. You're working with a lot of other people who have not undergone training. So your interactions with them also take place. Therefore, I think there's a lot of resistance at the workplace for the implementation of them. So there may be a huge learning, but the learning is lost over a period of time. As you give gaps to the event. The once you have gone through the event, you go back with a lot of hype, you try to implement things, they don't get implemented for want of awareness, and then eventually, the learning that they've had, it loses its importance and significance, and it gets lost over a period of time. The most important factor here is behavioral training. Behavioral training has more disadvantages than skill training. Because skill training is something which you learn and you implement immediately. Nobody can question you. But your behavior is 60% of your workplace. Actually, 60% of the workplace is your behavior. And it is only the rest 40% where you are implementing the skill. So your behavior and your responses and your reactions to certain things, certain interventions, certain actions are very, very significant for each job, for each task. Even if you are, suppose, responding to your senior or responding to your colleague who is, interacting or passing on information to you or giving you certain product to process further, you are interacting with them. But in this process, what happens is the behavioral training cannot be implemented because they need, each one of them need to be trained in the kind of response and behavior. So even if you choose a group for a certain kind of behavior, eventually when they go back to the place of work, the same thing applies. They are not able to implement it because all of them have not gone through that training.
Okay, so got an idea. So it's basically training is more to do with certain focus group which will not be able to implement it within the organization.
I will not say will not be implemented, but it is more difficult to implement because there are lots of blocks and resistances because there's no hand-holding involved.
Correct. There is no hand-holding. Okay. So if we look at morphing, what are the advantages of it?
Oh, morphing is a brilliant idea. In fact, it is a brilliant process, and we've had experiences in various MSMEs. And I feel very proud to talk about morphing because we have implemented the process in a big way, and the companies have shown big results. Those who have taken these processes with them. So in morphing, what happens, Anubha, is there are many tools involved. It is not just training. So it can be leadership coaching, it can be psychometric testing, it can be cross-functional teams, it can be Kaizen, it can be anything under the sun that actually helps them to realize that they need to change and this is how they need to implement the change. And secondly, what is very important here is that morphing gets individual attention. Every individual gets an attention in this process because it's a journey, it's a process. So the company and we, PERCON, as a team, have a great, sort of time period allocated to us so that we can have that individual interaction with everyone. And that gets subsequently reinforced through group action. See, suppose you're doing a interaction with one-to-one with somebody, and another person, maybe his internal customer, is also undergoing that kind of coaching or a counseling session. It is followed by a group action where all those people who have gone through that coaching and they're related in that in a particular context, the group action, the group training reinforces whatever they've learned. So it comes to stay. And then there are follow-ups, of course, after the group.
Okay. So it's a wholesome process. If I want to.
Absolutely.
It's a wholesome process.
Absolutely. No one is left out. No one feels
left out. The entire organization becomes a part of it.
Correct.
Great. So that was
exactly. And
Yeah. So
The
that was
next point that I want to mention in this conversation with you is that there are cross-functional barriers also. Say,
correct.
for
There
example,
are
maintenance does not get along well with production,
correct.
or accounts does not get along with HR, so on and so forth. I'm just giving you examples. So those cross-functional barriers can be also demolished in this. And systems and work methods are established. So as a fallout of the cross-functional barriers getting demolished, systems and work methods are easier to implement.
They
And
become they
yeah,
become the supreme rather than people, individual departments,
absolutely.
systems
The
and methods.
organization is supreme.
The
Organization.
organization becomes supreme.
And to test, you see, this is the last point that I have in this is that to test whether we have been successful or not, there are regular audits that are being done.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah, and at the end of it all, at the end of the journey, we do an assessment center so that the entire management comes to know what changes have happened, how people have changed their behavior also. So that is what I have to say about the advantages of morphing.
So that was a good insight on morphing.
Thank you. Thank
Hopefully,
you.
it'll help MSMEs understand the difference between the two,
Yeah.
and they'll take advantage of it. They will be.
Hopefully. Hopefully. Yes.
Thank you.
They need it very badly. They need it very badly.
I know. I know.
In fact, that's why we are calling this, I think, this conversation a savior. Morphing is the savior for MSMEs. So it
It's
is
just
going.
that they need to understand it. That it's a savior for them.
Correct. Correct.
Let's
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anupam.